Welcome, everybody. We're the Fantasy Formula, and we're live ahead of the sprint race at Interlagos. And it could be a wet and wild weekend, so we're keeping a close eye on the weather forecast all throughout the hour. Zach and Terry, are you ready to rumble?
I certainly am. It should be quite interesting. I think we've got a dry sprint from what we're hearing, but yeah, it should all be good.
Yeah, very excited for it. I can't wait to show everyone what team selection I've got, and it's looking like a nice weekend to try and figure out what we've got going on. Yeah.
I'm just reading Will's message. Sorry, Zach. That's completely thrown me on the off. Are we waiting for Zach to unbutton his shirt?
Nah, not this time.
That's a bit harsh. Technical difficulties were all on Adam this week.
It's all me. It had nothing to do with the shirt. No one lets me unbutton my shirt on this show. We've got a lot of our friends loaded up in the chat. Good morning to you, Mike. Hi, Race Maven. Welcome aboard. We've got a lot to talk about in this hour. So, Zach, maybe we can pull up some of the times from yesterday and just talk about what we learned on the Friday. As we go through FP1, I mean, really the story is at the very top and very bottom of the grid. McLaren looked like they're well and truly back in it with both cars. And so I think that's good news for the McLaren constructor. Those of us that are thinking about a triple McLaren build with the bigger budgets like Zach. But then all the way at the bottom of the grid, we had the likes of both Ferraris and Max Verstappen that didn't put up a flying lap on softer tires. They attempted to. They fitted the tires, but they couldn't get a flying lap without either an interruption, an error, or I think in Max's case, it's just some issues that he aborted the lap. So we couldn't really tell what their single lap pace was until sprint qualifying, and a little foreshadowing, it left a lot to be desired. Terry, was there anything from free practice 1 that stood out to you?
No, I think we've got the usual. Some teams have got their setups almost bang on. Some teams clearly don't know what the best setup is. And I think that's the problem with the sprint races, isn't it? We're going to see a lot of that going on as the weekend progresses with teams locking in their setup via the sprint races, which I think is probably the downside with this new rule with the part Fermi. I think we see it as if you're out the top 10 or hovering around that, you'll use it more as a FP2 session rather than a sprint race, aren't you? So there's a lot of that, I think, going on. You can see the teams who've got the setups right and a dial straight in. So McLaren spring to mind straight away. And then you can see the teams like Ferrari ran with 2 different wings for free practice 1. Charles had a much more higher downforce one than what Lewis. They both went for the higher downforce one in the sprint qualifying. So you've clearly got a divide there of teams who still don't know their best setups, who are still tweaking. And with an hour to just dial it in clearly isn't enough. With the tyres they got available, with the incremental weather that we got coming, there's a lot of question marks, I think, from some of the teams.
The other big story from free practice 1 was that Yuki Tsunoda had a pretty big incident. Looked like he hit the front of the car, but then fast forward a little bit, F1 TV was in the Red Bull garage, and it was Chris Medlin who joined us earlier in the week. He pointed at the front of the car. That suspension looked okay, but then most of the mechanics were on the back of the car. So perhaps it recoiled and hit another part of the wall. There was a lot of work done to the back of that car. Yuki really struggled in sprint qualifying. And now Lannister's saying in the chat that Sainz and Tsunoda are starting from the pit lane for the sprint race. So that car for Yuki is definitely going to be very different than how it entered the weekend. Makes me worry about the Red Bull constructor.
Absolutely. No, definitely.
All right, let's head over to sprint qualifying because this was a really interesting one. It seemed like Ferrari was struggling in all 3 SQ sessions, really just trying to barely get out. Lewis obviously couldn't make it out in SQ2. There was a spin late in SQ2 with Charles. He had already made it into SQ3, but Lewis was improving and couldn't quite get the lap all the way around, so he was out unexpectedly. Tsunoda, like we mentioned a moment ago, couldn't get it going, starts at the bottom of the grid. Zach, I think one of the big questions we're going to get is about Carlos Sainz. Qualified dead last, will be starting this race from the pit lane. Does that mean it's overtake city for him?
Yes and no. We know how the sprints can be. If the whole grid is bunched up, it's going to be a no. You're going to have to hope that he makes his moves at the start. But if he's starting in the pit lane, well, not much hope. But for me, Carlos Sainz, he's not a bad asset to keep a hold of. It's just when you look at it in the sense of most people will have Sainz and Lawson or Sainz and Alonso. And for me, you can't have both of them because they're all going down in budget. And especially with the Sainz and Alonso, when Alonso has this pace that he's been showing right now with P5, I think it's very clear that you'd want to stick with Alonso over Sainz. But people like Lawson I think if you've got both Lawson and Sainz, then that's where you could consider keeping Sainz. So it all depends on who you've got in your team, but it's sort of a middle ground of, let's say you've got Alonso, Sainz, Lawson. The ranking is Alonso, the first pick, then Sainz, then Lawson.
And I think this news that Sainz is starting from the pit lane, I agree with you, Zach. It's good news and bad news. It's good news in that no lap 1 carnage, because he's going to be joining that pack as they're taking the corner. Bad news is you're probably going to do a lot of your overtake damage on lap 1, turn 1, and he's lost a lot of that. And in a short race, I'm not sure he's going to be able to make up as many places as we had first hoped. And later on, we're going to look through the F1 Fantasy Tools sims for this race. It's got Sainz at about 10 points. I think I'd probably knock him down to 7 or 8 now, because he's not going to have some of that lap 1, turn 1 overtake that we were hoping for.
Yeah, I suppose the only good thing is it bode well to getting a decent setup for the race and for qualifying, because actually it means they've made some changes. He clearly wasn't happy with the car. I think he called it the worst qualified he's ever done over the team radio, didn't he? So, I mean, if anything, it might dial something back in for Williams that they've kind of been lacking, or certainly Carlos has been lacking this weekend, mightn't it? So, I suppose with 2 bites of the cherry with qualifying and the race still to come, it might be good from that point of view.
See, we've got some of our members in the chat. Race Maven's got his Wi-Fi going again. I'm struggling too this morning, so no judgment there. Rebecca, you made it to Kathmandu. Congratulations, and enjoy your travels there. Glad you could still join us.
Adam's neighbours changed the Wi-Fi code.
All right, now where should we go from here? Should we look at those F1 Fantasy Tools sims just to see who stands out? Because I think it's going to determine a lot of our big decisions for the weekend. The big one was Max versus Lando. You can see they're separated by just the slimmest of margins here. I expect, on the one hand, Lando won in Mexico by 30 seconds, looked good in FP1 and in sprint qualifying, so he could just run away with the weekend. Meanwhile, with Verstappen, you expect him to gain some positions in the sprint today. He's got some slower drivers ahead of him, and of course, he's capable of anything in the Grand Prix tomorrow. So I would say either of those drivers are a good asset to have as your 2X driver. But Zach, are you leaning toward one or the other in a week where we've got to have the points?
It has to be Norris. I was very much considering on the fence of Norris or Verstappen. I mean, I talked about it actually in our preview show, where I do stand with Verstappen was the foundation of, if we were coming into this race with a lot of rain potential, that he probably would be the one I'd stick with. But just the more we're going into this weekend, the more it looks like it's calming down. I think bar qualifying, maybe in the sprint we're going to get some rain. I actually haven't seen fully if we're going to get that exactly yet. But if it's only qualifying where we're getting this crazy weather, I actually fear for Max in that, because he could easily put it on pole and then drop down when it's a dry track. The McLarens just have too much raw pace. So yeah, for me, it has to be Norris. He's shown so much form at the minute. I don't really know where it's come from, but if he's in my F1 Fantasy team, please continue it.
It's going to be a struggle all weekend. We saw it back in Spa. We had teams really load up those rear wings in expectation of the rain. And then the FIA used some scheduling flexibility, slid the race out to a point where it would be drier. And then those teams were all caught out. So they could do some of this. We saw qualifying move to Grand Prix Sunday last season. So we could see a shift where it is actually dry in all 3 sessions, but with the spots of rain all across the radar, who knows what we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, latest forecast is showing dry for the sprint. Obviously, I haven't seen what it's showing for qualifying itself, but they got that flexibility. I think their main aim is if they can get the sprint done and dusted and actually, fully boxed off, then actually that gives them a lot of flexibility to move the schedule as per the weather conditions. So I don't think it's as bad as what was being painted yesterday. It was looking quite bleak yesterday, but looking at the weather forecast, it looks like it's kind of blown through and over rather than hitting the track, is from what I'm seeing online at the moment currently.
Yeah, they were reporting a cyclone warning yesterday. So it's like, oh my gosh, no negative autopilot. Give me all the chips you can.
Yeah, I mean, it's still in place. Don't get me wrong. It's still there and it's still showing as in place. But I think, all the updates are showing, dry sprint, overcast, but not raining. So I think it's one of those where it's Brazil. It could turn, as we know, very quickly, very rapidly. And like Zach says, I wouldn't rule out anything towards the back end of the sprint, maybe. Because we've seen it. It's one of those venues, isn't it? Which 1 minute it can be dry, next minute it's just literally torrential over there. So I wouldn't rule it out, but from what I can see, it looks like it's going to be a dry sprint race, which should be good for data and should be good for getting some stuff done.
Absolutely.
I will say as well, just on we briefly mentioned no negative there and autopilot. I would still say for both of them, it's probably the best shout for the last bit of the season,
Yeah.
especially if you've got no negative, because
If you've got it, yeah.
Yeah, because just like Terry mentioned, it's just we can have that little brief moment of just torrential rain just all of a sudden come about. And at the end of the day, we're coming up to Vegas, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi. If there's any mixed conditions there, I think I'd shave my head. Like, so this
You
is
heard
the
it
last
here
track.
first.
You heard it live. If I'm in Qatar and it rains, I can't wait to see Zach's head being shaved. I have got another bit of an update as well. Yuki Tsunoda is also starting from the pit lane.
So it's going to be
So,
interesting. Signs and
so
Tsunoda in the
Yuki,
pit lane. I don't know who
Sainz
goes
and
out.
Tsunoda both in the pit lane.
Who comes out first out of those two? Who's got the
Yuki.
Interesting.
So yeah, so it'd be Yuki. Then the order they've got it on the starting grid is Yuki, then Carlos from the pit lane. So I'd imagine that's the order they come out of, because they normally like to do things in order when they produce all these graphics. To be honest.
Gotcha.
So where was Yuki? Where did he qualify in the end? So who's moved
It
up?
was quite low down. It was like
It was quite low down.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much it impacts.
Yeah, he was out in SQ1, so it would only be
a
few.
Yeah, so it's only a few, isn't it?
Zach, you're the resident big budget expert, so let me pass on this question from Rebecca. She has Alonso, Sainz, and Gasly. You just talked about not having Alonso and Sainz together. Was thinking about switching Gasly for Bortoleto, but now should she switch Sainz for Bortoleto or Behrman to break up that Alonso-Sainz pairing?
I think you should. From initial thinking, I was about to go straight in with yes, and I think I'm going to stick with that, just in the sense of it's fine. We've seen Alpine assets are fine to hold these days most of the time. Well, we'll see. Well, touch wood, but I don't think there's enough that Sainz could get over the Alpines at the minute for me to push towards someone I know is going to go down in budget. Whereas we don't really talk about the double Alpines being a 0.6 million increaser, but at a sprint race weekend, if they just keep it clean, I could see them both getting 5+ points, and that's all they need. So I definitely think it'd be worthwhile actually, going Sainz to Behrman if you want that safe budget increaser, or Bortoleto for the driver of the day chance, which I think this late into the season, I'd risk it with Bortoleto instead. But it does come down to, because this is why I mentioned like not really worrying too much about budget at the same time, where just think about your Vegas teams, look into who's looking to go down in budget, because we've actually got like so many drivers looking like they're going to go down in budget. We've got Hadjar, Lawson, Sainz, Alonso, Ocon. They're all going down in budget, and most likely after this weekend, most of them will be under 6 million. If you can still get to them, whilst also having someone like an Alonso who's going down definitely 0.6 million in your team, then you don't really need to worry about where the budget's going down or not. Because with only 3 races left after this one, there's just not enough time for you to build any extra budget that would really help, unless you are literally like 0.6 million off a Norris Verstappen team.
In Zach, there's a related question from Jonas in the chat. Is -10 worth selling Sainz for Behrman or Bortoleto? I've gotten this wrong so many times, I've got to say no. Because yes, on paper, Bortoleto and Behrman should score more points than Sainz. They're safer assets. They should go up in value. But what if they get piled up into turn 1 either today or tomorrow? Then they're losing -20 and they're losing the value. You've just lost everywhere. And a few of us have chased it this year, and it's gone pretty painfully. So I wouldn't recommend it for you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, because I am conscious, because I am dropping out halfway through the show. If I do disappear, don't get worried, everybody. I've got somewhere to be. But yeah, for me, it's a case of, I think we're that late in the season. I'm not too sure a -10 to chase a bit of budget is probably worth it. That's where I thought with mine when I loaded mine. I was like, I've got that situation where I've got both Carlos and Alonso still in it. To move either one of them would have been a -10. So I'm kind of like at the point this late in the season. Do you know what? It's not worth taking a -10 to move one of those over what I'm going to lose in the budget. I'd rather try and see if one of them happens to have a storming weekend and pulls them out of the bag and does something a bit spectacular in one of the sessions to actually get the points rather than doing that way.
Good question and answer in the chat from Surfing Night. Is it too risky to delay 3x until Qatar? No, I'd still keep it for Qatar.
No.
I mean, I have it, and that's what I plan on doing. even though it could be dry today and it could be dry tomorrow, I wouldn't dare risk it, considering how dry Qatar will be. I think they'll also be implementing more tire stint requirements for Qatar too. So I think you'll have fewer technical issues, a little bit more of a parade route, and fewer overtakes. I'd be happy with waiting.
Yeah, I'm very worried of everyone doing the extra DRS on Qatar for my team. I really am just pushing. Yeah, I'm pushing as far as forward as I can before I take that like 100-point delta hit.
Terry, we should use the extra one in Vegas.
Terry, we haven't reminded the people to hit that like button.
Yes,
so I don't know where we're at for likes, but make sure you hit the like button if you can hear me.
Yeah, definitely.
I've locked in my lineup, so once we get enough likes, I'll be sure.
We are on 31 likes. We can push that up higher.
Yeah, I've locked in mine as well. Yeah, so yeah.
Let's knock out some questions in the chat while you're all hitting the like button for us. Gasly or Alonso? Oh, it depends, doesn't it? Gasly more likely to go up in value this weekend. Alonso's pace looks good, but man, what is it? 7 DNFs he's up to this year. Can we trust him anywhere?
I've got Alonso, so I'd say go for Gasly because every time I've had Alonso, something's happened to him. So by rule of thumb, I would say go Gasly to save yourself. There's no method to it, just the fact that every time I've picked Alonso, he's DNF. So yeah, absolutely go Gasly.
Now to call back a point from the show earlier this week, he has an extensive history of DNFs at sites like Monza and Coda in Mexico, and he DNF'd at those places again this year. It's been 13 years since his last Interlagos DNF, so if history does repeat itself, he could be safe this weekend. And we do trust him in the rain generally, so we'll see.
Yeah, I trust Alonso over who else would it really be? But actually, I trust Alonso over Gasly in the DNF, to be fair, here, if it was raining. Trust him over Sainz, definitely in the rain, and just in general. Lawson as well, I trust him to not get the DNF over.
We got the rookie stats, haven't we? The rookies in the rain haven't, I mean, I know the season's gone on a bit since the start of the season, but actually, the rookies in the rain actually have put some question marks over. I mean, I think a lot of it is they don't get that wet running option at any point, do they? So I think it is genuinely a experience where they just haven't been able to run a Formula One car in wet torrential conditions. So the moment the track gets some of that, they've never driven on it. You can't replicate that in a simulator very easy. So it kind of, until you've done a few of them, it's one of those question mark ones, isn't it? I think.
Guys, we've got Vishnu in the chat, one of our members, and he's got an interesting question. He's got Norris, Leclerc, Bortoleto, Sainz, Alonso, McLaren, Mercedes now. Can get to Piastri, but needs to swap out one of the B-tier drivers. Ooh, I imagine that would be
It'd have
Bortoleto.
to be Sainz, I think.
Really, Bortoleto? I would go Sainz or Alonso because Bortoleto says he's got your potential driver of the day in there still.
Yeah.
So
if you have Norris Leclerc, you probably have the money to go Norris Russell.
Yes.
And then you're mostly fine there.
Yeah. I've got something very similar, to be fair, and I went Norris and Russell with that one. And then
that brings us back to the poll where I was asking everyone who is going to be their second A-tier driver. Because I think that is the gist of it at the minute. It's Norris and someone else for most teams out there. And 45% are going Russell, 30% are going Piastri, and 10% are going Verstappen, whilst 15% are going other. So I'm assuming like a Antonelli or a Sonoda.
Right, on cue, we've got a question here. Is Antonelli a real option?
Definitely.
Definitely. First time here at this track. Put it P2, didn't he? Looked solid, certainly in the dry part. So I'd say he's an option.
And this is one of the good things about the Friday sessions. It made it pretty clear McLaren and Mercedes are standing out ahead of Ferrari and Red Bull. Ferrari because they just don't look right with either driver. Red Bull because Yuki looks so lost. So I would trust both Mercedes and both McLarens now.
Absolutely.
We're up to 63 likes now. Zach, let's head over to some of our member lineups and start working through a few of those.
Let's go for it.
All right, let's see. What do we have here?
So this is Rick's one, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, Rick is looking at max teams. I would already rule out the team on the end that is no McLaren for Ferrari and a -10 before I look at anything else.
Yeah, no McLaren at all feels too risky. I mean, I would even go for the second team and actually swap Max for Lando even.
If you have the cash to do it.
Yeah,
I think there's an extra million or so in it.
Should be quite.
I think the budget would be there if the one free transfer can go from Alonso to Sainz. I think that means you can go Verstappen to Norris. Yeah.
I mean, I would even be tempted to keep Alonso and swap. Do it that way if you want to, and swap Max as a driver out rather than Alonso as a driver out if it's too much of an issue. But I think you could do both. Looking at what he's got with the current team, I think you could do Max for Lando, and I think you could still do Alonso out there as well.
Rick's back in the chat and says Piastri, Antonelli, Bortoletto, Behrman, Sainz. So the drivers at the bottom are better, but then you're going 2x with Piastri before he's proven himself.
I think it's too risky putting the 2 times on Piastri, just with the form he's been in. Norris looking like he's faster than him right now, just especially on a sprint race weekend. I spout on about this so much, but getting the 2 times driver right is so important. We saw it in Kota, I mean, a little bit when I used extra DRS, like how just detrimental it can be if you don't get that 3 times, 2 times right. And right now, all signs are leading to Norris. The weather's calming down. Piastri's not on pace with him at the minute. It has to be Norris right now.
I saw something interesting this week, which got me reading a bit more in depth into it, and it looks like Red Bull's DRS advantage might be back.
Oh,
on the sly, yeah, and it's only been from like kind of Austin in Mexico with their floor upgrade, but it looks like that kind of explains why people are struggling to get past the Red Bulls in traffic, and kind of explains a bit around sort of Oscar being unable to catch and get past and all those things. The McLaren looks great when it's on its own out front. The McLaren doesn't look great when it's in traffic. And I think that's the one thing we've got to remember about Oscar here is Lando, I can imagine, will go off and be able to lead. Whichever that lead McLaren is, I think when that car's in clear air with nothing in front of it, it can manage absolutely everything. It's almost like perfection. But as soon as it gets in traffic, it's lost all of the changes we've seen, all of the tweaks we've seen with the mini DRS, all those things that have been over the past season or so come into effect. That McLaren hasn't got that when it's in traffic. It can't find that extra bit of pace it needs to get past for whatever reason. And then it relies on tyre saving. It relies on offset strategy, which we don't see a lot of because of the way the tyres are. So I think if you've got a McLaren in the pack, we're not seeing it come through the pack. Whereas if you've got McLaren out at front, you can almost stake on not being able to catch and pass that McLaren because in clear air, it's king as such.
So it really depends if Lando can run away in the sprint today and then stamp it on pole and run away tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, if Max is on the front row, it could be limiting for his ceiling.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you've got a Mercedes or potentially if you've got a Max pole, then if you think back to the past few races we've had as well where Max has been in the lead, how many times have we seen McLaren come up to him but not actually been able to overtake when we've expected McLaren to come up and overtake, but it's sat behind and not been able to get. It can get within DRS, but it can't get that extra bit. Once you add in that battery saving, knowing where you are on track, knowing where the DRS is going to open, Max is clever enough a driver to position his car, which means I can put my car in there, save my battery. As soon as the DRS comes into effect, dump the battery, keep the car behind me.
He's so clever at that. And
yeah.
Going back to Rick, so he says, I can't swap Norris and Alonso. It would be Norris and either Alonso or Colapinto. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I'd be happy.
Yeah.
And then just a matter of margins of your budget, Rick. If you're close to, like Zach said earlier, a Vegas team where you need a little extra budget to make your team work, go with Colapinto because he can only go down so much, and he actually has a chance of going up with a few lucky bounces. Alonso's likely to go down. But if you're all points, Alonso has a higher ceiling.
Yeah, I want to briefly mention that again, just for everyone. Like the B-tier drivers, we hit like a peak of how much they're going to cost in this season, because we went on quite a little good run for a lot of them, where You had Ocon, who was quite expensive, Hulkenberg, who was quite expensive, Sainz, who was like stabilizing a little bit. We're now getting to a point where from only having really double Alpine around 4.5 million, next race weekend, we potentially have around 5 or 6 B tier assets below 6 million. So especially when we're getting to the point where budgeting isn't mattering as much and the B tier drivers are dropping in budget, it's leaving a lot of room for us to just focus on a lot of points. Because also at the end of the day, Alonso's probably gonna be a good asset to hold for the rest of the season, most likely. So you could even just think, okay, screw it. I'm just going to hold on to Alonso now until he drops back to 4.5 million, and then he'll just go back up because Alonso, we've seen when he doesn't DNF, he can get good points in F1 Fantasy. He just needs to finish a race.
Zach, on the topic of the Alpines, there was a question in the chat about which one you'd prefer for this weekend. For me, I would lean toward Gasly just because history at the circuit. He's got two podiums here, 4 top 10 finishes. Looked pretty decent in free practice, considering he's driving an Alpine. But then also with Colapinto, they just announced the contract extension, a pseudo home race. If it's a boring race and anything happens to Bortoletto, he could get driver of the day. So
I was about to say that. I wouldn't rule Franco out for a driver of the day. We know that support is massive, isn't it? That driver announcement. It only needs one of those drives where he's in or around the points or even, a few overtakes, that sort of things. And actually, we can't bank on driver of the day, can we? We sit here and we speculate. We've seen some really weird ones, haven't we? How many times we sat here and gone, where did that come from? So I do think there's an element of that, isn't there, where we can sit here and speculate, Bortoletto being a homegrown talent, absolutely Colapinto. But actually, if we see a decent drive from somebody else, we know that people will just vote and just vote how they want to. So it's not a guaranteed any day, is it?
Guys, we have a new member.
Oh,
welcome.
I don't even know. 5190. Welcome aboard. Thank you so much for supporting.
Welcome. Yes.
I thought you didn't know who the member was. I did have to read that twice. I was like,
I don't even know, and they don't even know.
I was like, really?
Vision wants to know, remind us what your thoughts are regarding Alonso, Sainz, and Behrman. I would say Behrman's a pretty safe lock, likely to go up in points. The number 1 overtakes leader on the grid at a medium overtake circuit, so he's safe. Alonso and Sainz both likely to go down in price, but do have high point ceilings. So keep an eye out on what your Vegas lineup will be. If you need all of that budget, you might want to pivot one of Alonso or Sainz out for an Alpine that's a little more cost protected. If you're looking for just points maximum, roll the 3 of them out.
But I've just seen a message from Rude as well, where they were talking about needing 0.1 million to go up to get both McLaren drivers for Vegas and onwards. These are the sort of
then it's worth it, isn't it?
It's worth looking at the budget side of thing. One last push to be able to get something like that. But yeah, if you're a team like mine, where the next best team is 2-3 million in budget away, it's not really worth looking at it anymore.
Couple questions about the best Sauber driver, Hulkenberg or Bortoletto. I just haven't seen it from Hulkenberg in a while. So I've got to trust Gabby. I think probably one of the best odds on the grid for driver of the day, if he can keep it all together. And he's been pretty solid in fantasy terms lately, the last few weeks scoring good points. So I'd say give me Gabby.
Saubers looked quite good in free practice as well, didn't they? They didn't look too bad. Was it Hulkenberg was P3? So I think the Saubers got enough pace to be in amongst the points as well, which I think will be enough to rocket Gabby in the driver of the day. So I think there's an element of that, definitely. I don't think they look as bad, but then the Alpines have actually looked quite settled. I mean, it's quite interesting watching the Alpines scratch their heads over not actually knowing why the car looks quite good. I don't know if you saw that, because did you see that, where they were kind of scratching their heads and going, we don't know why, but it looks quite settled and looks quite good.
A very Alpine thing to do, yeah.
Absolutely. What an Alpine
lucky us.
We're not quite sure, but hey, car looks good this weekend. Brilliant.
Ooh, Zach, this is a question that I don't even know the answer to. Is Leclerc to Russell worth the -10?
I remember when I mentioned this, because I replied to a comment on this, and I did say it wasn't worth the -10, just because in my head I was thinking, normally Ferrari do this every now and then, where they just have like 0 sprint race pace, and then in qualifying they'll just go, oh, here we are again. So I think if they get their setup right, they'll be fine. I think Leclerc will still get around 20-ish points. I think Russell's going to get around 30-ish. So then it comes down to, if you took a -10, I think they'd get equal points. So I don't think it's worth it.
That's exactly what I was going to say too. You think back to China, Ferrari looked great in the sprint part of the weekend, fell off in the Grand Prix, then they had the disqualification. Coda, it was the opposite. They looked lost in the sprint and then made the setup changes look great in the Grand Prix. So it's whether or not you believe that Ferrari are going to make the changes to get both drivers back into the fray.
I don't think, judging by Mercedes' history here, that Ferrari can make enough changes to leapfrog the Mercedes. I think that if we look at how strong Mercedes tend to be in Brazil, in these cool weather climates, in this track, I'm not too sure where, even with the sprint data, Ferrari can do enough with the car they got to leapfrog Mercedes. I think Mercedes will be behind the McLarens, but be the best of the rest, so to speak. Max will be, as he always is, the one in there, the unknown as such in there, where he will put his car, as high as he can and cause a disruption in there. But I think if we're going in orders, I would say that Mercedes will have enough in their locker to cover off anything that Ferrari do. I've not seen anything from Ferrari that makes me go, even after the sprint data, even after the stuff they got, the changes they make are going to suddenly put them ahead of Mercedes, judging on what we've seen from Mercedes round into Lagos previously.
And the betting lines do agree with Terry on this one, because the last ones as of this morning were Mercedes, Ferrari. So that means Antonelli above Leclerc in the Grand Prix prediction.
Yeah.
So that gives you a sense of how much Mercedes has gained and how much room Ferrari has to gain just to be back in the picture.
Do you want to do lineups before I jump off?
Sure. Yeah, Zach, my lineup's posted too.
Logically. Yeah,
yes, that's fine. That is fine. Right. Who wants to go first?
I can go first.
Yeah,
I'm probably the most boring out of all of us. Zach's got the big budget.
I think mine's equally as boring this week.
Here we go.
All right. So thank goodness I had the 3 free transfers. I was able to move things around because I had Max and Leclerc, so I knew things had to be different this weekend. Moving over to Norris for the first time in a long time. Sticking with Old Faithful George Russell. I think he's going to be great come Vegas. Should be strong enough this weekend. It's an Alpine sandwich at the bottom, so we just need to hope that they stay out of trouble for the weekend. But if they get just modest points, a couple of overtakes, a few positions gained as other drivers retire from the race, they could be in line for 0.2 or even 0.6 million gained. And I'm rolling with Sainz. I hope he can make up some positions today and just keep it on the rails for tomorrow.
Yeah, I like this team. It's sort of along the lines we're talking about, isn't it? Where it's like you have that one potential points driver who will probably go down, but then you got the Alpines as the holding stuff. Interestingly, Adam, wait, what's your budget looking at the minute? Rick's asking for
132.7.
I don't know, Rick. And I'm not going to delete my team to find out this close to the lineup.
Well, how about this? We can reverse engineer this. So let's look at Terry's lineup, and if it's much different.
Here we go. It's very similar lines.
It is, and I didn't have the extra transfer, so hence why I've still got the Sainz and the Alonso in there, because I needed to move out of the Max move that I had, and I had Charles as well. So mine was a straight swap between Max and Charles for Russell and Norris, basically, and save my -10, because what I gained in budget wise, I kind of just went with the rounds of, taking a -10 for Sainz and Alonso, moving one of those two wasn't really worth it. And then I couldn't even moving it, I couldn't really see where I was going to go with it. There wasn't anything that kind of was going to gain me much more in budget, that side of things. So I went with a standard normal week without anything on there. But I don't know what my budget is, Rick.
I wouldn't trust my speed math, but basically the difference between our lineups is Alonso versus the second Alpine. That's about $1 million. Then you've got 0.7 in the bank versus my 0.1. So we'll call Terry around 134-ish.
There you go. Sounds about right. I'll take that. Yeah, like I say, it's not so much you track on. I just put the drivers in and see if I could afford it, Rick. To be honest, and that's kind of where I am with it. I kind of take a driver out and go, no, can't afford that. Put it back in.
That's good though, because sometimes the trial and error, it helps you unlock some lineups that you just couldn't picture in your head the first time.
That's what I mean.
All right, Zach, are you gonna have a dramatic reveal and make us wait, or are you ready to go?
No, I'm ready to go. Whoa. Yeah, very similar lines, just slightly more budget and autopilot as well. I think that's the
good
big
call.
thing. That is the big thing that pushed me towards Norris and Piastri, not really caring too much about the budget side, because I could have gone Norris Russell with Colapinto, Behrman, Alonso, McLaren Mercedes, but I was like, when am I going to use autopilot? I've kind of just got to use it. Like Piastri could throw a surprise in potentially,
especially if he qualifies well.
Yeah,
if he qualifies well for the actual race, then as we said earlier, McLaren at front, suddenly that becomes a good move, doesn't it?
But it's the same thing as sort of what we've seen with both Terry and Adam's teams, where I've got the double Alpine, which is just the holding assets. Hopefully one of them, if I'm lucky, can get a 0.6 million increase. That would actually do me a lot of favors. And then Alonso, just to see what he can do, really. Just to see if he can get those huge points haul. Doesn't matter what he does, because I think I sort of mentioned it when I had an answer to another question where I was like, you can just keep Alonso basically till the end of the season. I think that's probably what I'm going to do. If Gasly and Colapinto go up 0.2 or 0.6 million, I've got about 1.1 million in the bank. I'll get rid of Colapinto, go up to someone like a Ocon or a Hadjar, whoever's at like 5.8, 5.9 million or 6 million, and then I'll go from there. I think that's the plan.
It's a great team, Zach. I'm super, super jealous of it. And I think it's going to be a good weekend for McLaren as they get both drivers back in the fight. And hopefully we can see a good battle in the Drivers' Championship come out of it. A couple questions.
Right, before we move on to the chat, so I'm going to jump off. So if you haven't already liked the video, subscribe.
Do it in Terry's honor.
I am doing it in my honor. I hope you all have a good weekend, and I will catch you soon.
You're the man, Terry. All right, Zach, couple questions in the chat. Sonoda or Behrman? It depends on how spicy you're feeling. So Behrman's the safe one, right? He's going to be in the middle of the pack, overtakes leader on the season, upgraded Haas in Mexico, looks stronger. Haas looked good at this race last season. Sonoda, who knows what they changed on that Red Bull to have him start in the pit lane? He can only go up today, but like Sainz, will he reach the back of the pack and make a ton of moves? Considering Yuki hasn't done that historically when he starts at the back. I'm leaning Behrman just for the safe nature of it.
I think I am as well. And I'm actually quite surprised because the Sims are saying Sonoda 10.5 to Behrman's 5.7. So there's quite a big points difference between them. But yeah, I don't see a world where like that was Sonoda's true pace. We've seen in the last few race weekends where he has been a little bit like, he could have almost got into Q3 or whatnot. This time out, he was not on it. He's also had a collision. He's hit the wall in practice one. I just think Sonoda's looking a little bit too risky right now for my liking. Should we head over to some of the more the lineups?
Sure. Yeah. While we do that, I'll knock out. I don't even know. Is it worth taking a -10 for Gasly over Sainz? I would never take a -10 on a B tier driver. I've tried it and failed on it several times because that B tier driver you move into and take that -10 could DNF and then you're much worse off. I would just roll the dice with who you have. What else do we have here? All right, this is Race Maven. So we've got Autopilot. Ooh, this could be a great weekend for Autopilot with those kinds of lineups.
It comes to the Aston Martin builds that we haven't seen quite a lot, but it's an interesting. It's the only B tier constructor that kind of works. But would I risk for it?
It is Stroll in the rain. We've called him Wet Senna before, but also Brazil last season he beached himself. Just getting to the grid. Do we trust it, or do we just tuck into a team on the end? Looks like he'll need wild card to get into the end.
The only reason I'm thinking more towards Team 3 is just because I expect this is a similar team that we're going to be running in Vegas to what we'll need there. So I could understand it being a good time to wildcard, and I don't really see another time you'd need to wildcard after this. And you also get Alonso, Gasly, Colapinto. You've still got Norris and McLaren. So I think I'm leaning towards Team 3.
I think that's fine. And what that will mean then for your Autopilot is you'll stick with a similar lineup for this week and for Vegas. And then you'll probably want to downgrade. I think because of your budget, you'll need to downgrade Mercedes or McLaren eventually. and then switch around your top 2 drivers so that you have 2 good autopilot options. So do that wild card this week. Azir in the chat wants to know, do I keep Leclerc and save a free transfer or move to Russell and use that transfer? This is a decision I had, and I chose to use the free transfer on Russell. Where I draw the line is taking a -10 to make it.
Yeah. If you have the transfer just to do it, I agree. That should be fine. But it's just too late in the season to be taking these -10s, I think. It was all fine and dandy doing it like back in Bahrain or whatnot. I remember I took my first -20 ever in F1 Fantasy, and it hurt me to my core. But like yeah.
Well, you look at the timing of this, BZ's asking about a -10 on this team, but I quite like that team. And depending on where you came from previously, you might need to shake it up. Like if you only had 2 free transfers, for example, and you had Max and Leclerc and a B tier driver that you can't afford what you have here, suddenly becomes okay.
I did actually agree that there was one lineup where if you had like similar stuff. So I said if you have multiple of Verstappen, Leclerc, Ferrari, or Red Bull in your team, I would take the -10 to get out of it. That's the only situation that I would. So if this team came from, let's say you had Norris, Leclerc, McLaren, Red Bull, and another B tier driver that you needed to drop down to get rid of, like whoever you had there, Verstappen or Leclerc, I could understand taking the -10. But if this team got to a -10 just because you swapped over one of the B tier drivers and you don't physically need to do it, I think I'd push off of it.
Agreed. Yeah. If you got there because you took a -10 to move from Colapinto to either Alonso or Bortoleto, then I wouldn't do that. I'd just make the 2 moves, avoid the -10.
Oh, I think that's it. Let's give a quick refresh.
Fantastic.
Oh, here we go. We've got Juice Box.
Yes, one of our newest members here. 3 free transfers to play with. This is my current team. Haven't changed it since Mexico. It's okay. It's only 1 race. Not sure what to do with signs. I'm okay with this team.
Yeah, 128.8 million. It's that awkward stage that I mentioned where you can't really go to 280 of premium drivers unless you've got McLaren Aston. But Antonelli just looks so sharp right now. Doesn't even look like you'd really need to. And then you've got the 2 B tier drivers that hold onto the budget compared to Sainz. And you just hope that Sainz can push for the budget. I agree. I like this team.
Yeah, no problems there. That was an easy one. Question in the chat, Are we using autopilot? We used it earlier this year. It was the last time we had a Lando Oscar lineup, and it worked brilliantly for us, but now we just don't have autopilot anymore.
Well, that not for me.
Oh, sorry.
I remember that time, yeah, because that was the time where I 2 times Lando, and no, did I 2 times him?
I thought you autopiloted too.
I think I had Lando and Norris, and I decided not to autopilot because I thought another time was going to come up better in the season. And now I'm using it now, and I wish I used it in Zandvoort. Actually, let me check what I used in Zandvoort, because I know
I'll knock out some questions in the chat. But Zach, if you still have autopilot, you're running triple McLaren. Would you use it?
Yes, yeah. I will be using autopilot for that. And I just checked my Zandvoort team, and I do remember correctly, I had Piastri, Norris, McLaren, Aston. So quite similar teams to what we're running with a Norris 2 times. Yeah, that was a painful weekend.
Oh, my goodness.
But this is, I don't even know's 2 selections.
Oh, let's go over that. Our newest member.
It's a very similar ish. It's the exact same situation that I was in.
So the question at the top is Verstappen versus Norris. I would stick with Norris in both cases. And then we covered off in the chat -10 for Gasly over Sainz. We wouldn't do that. So then it's just a matter of which of these 2 builds would you do.
It's difficult because I would sort of push more to the Bortoleto team just because you've got both Alonso and Sainz. So you kind of really need that 0.6 million to at least balance the budget. But Yeah, I think you might have to go for the second team, although I'm not too happy with that.
Zach, couple bits of breaking news here. Race Maven just super chatted us, so thank you
Ooh.
so much, Race Maven. You are too kind. Sending extra good luck your way this weekend. Wish you many points.
Thank you,
And then
Race Maven. Yeah.
another note in the chat from William is that Porsche F1, this is the player who finished P2 in the Global League last year, has activated the 3x boost
Whoa.
with Norris and Russell.
With Russell.
Almost identical team to what many of us are running. It's Norris, Russell, Alonso, Sainz, Bortoleto, McLaren, Mercedes.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Wow.
it's
That is
the right team on this slide.
I'm very surprised they didn't wait till Qatar. I'm gonna try and see exactly what their reasoning was.
But it's moves like this that launch you higher and higher in the global league. And if I recall, Porsche F1 is in the top 1,000 in the global league right now. So he's not messing around. This is a push to get back toward the top. So be very interesting to see if this works.
It looks like it potentially is just a potential just a push for something that not anyone else is doing. Which, to be fair, if it works out, huge play. And to be fair, with extra DRS, the main talking point is the free times. And with how Lando's been looking, that could end up being half decent.
Speaking of one last push, if you haven't liked the video already, please make sure to do so. This is my one last push to get some love to the channel. Ooh, we haven't talked about this chip yet. Limitless.
Yes.
So the question is about Norris, Piastri, Russell, Antonelli, Verstappen, McLaren, Mercedes. So it really does come down to that last driver's box. I think we all agree. Norris, Verstappen, Russell, Norris, Piastri, Russell, Verstappen. Automatic. Do it. So then it's Antonelli, Leclerc. Oh, there's not a whole lot else after that, is there?
I think it'd have to be Antonelli. You just got to really hope he doesn't lose too many positions in the sprint. This is what I worry about Antonelli, because it sort of goes under the radar a little bit sometimes, but he can sometimes not have the best of starts. And in a sprint race, we can't be having that. That is like worst case scenario. There's no recovering from that. But he has shown that he's got more pace than Russell this weekend. And the only last time we saw that would actually be all the way, I think it probably would have been back in Miami. And without the max collision in the pit stops, he would have actually got half decent points that weekend. So I think I'm okay with sticking with Antonelli.
The Antonelli splits this season, something that has to be studied. The European circuits are ones that he's all raced at before, and that's where he's done the worst this season. Meanwhile, it's all the North and South American circuits that he's doing the best at. So very, very interesting case out of him.
Talking about the chips as well, on the poll for what chips people will be using this weekend, 35% will be using no negative, 31% autopilot, 5% limitless, and 28% other. So extra DRS, no chip, whatnot. So actually, there's not a lot of limitless going on, but I'm assuming that's just because a lot of limitless has been used.
And maybe those others are waiting on final fix. Just see if anything crazy happens in qualifying later today. We saw Verstappen come back from P17 last year, and they're hoping to catch lightning in a bottle there. So I get that. Yeah, good point from Rick. Antonelli outperformed Russell in Mexico.
Oh, of course, yeah. That was only this last weekend. The other weekend, yeah.
Big Goose is here to ruin your weekend, Zach. McLarens will collide this weekend. Max will run away with
it. None of this talk, okay, please. This feels like such deja vu from when we were sitting here and I just activated my free times for Kota, and I was just like, no DNFs in the sprint, please. They go and collide into each other. I'm hoping. And Antonelli, please don't also be the cause of this crash. That because there is Antonelli there, they won't go too close to each other.
Yeah, I wish we had stayed live at the Coda sprint, because we all stayed on with producer Greg and we watched that first lap, and we all properly lost our marbles during that.
I couldn't believe what I was watching.
Would have made for good content.
All 3 of my assets dropping out.
Oh my goodness. So question in the chat about the 3X. Norris and Russell with Bortoleto, or Piastri and or with Norris and I assume Piastri with Gasly instead of Bortoleto. So Norris and Russell and Norris Piastri.
See, if you're using a chip, my mind would go to Norris Piastri, I think.
Yeah. This is why you save the big budget and save the big chips. It's so you can have a Norris Piastri moment like this.
That does actually bring us into the whole thing we were talking about all season of the Limitless, where we've just talked about all season how the longer you wait to use Limitless, the less points you get compared to everyone else's teams. Like, you look at everyone, like, even if you take into my team, you've got Norris, Piastri, McLaren, Mercedes. That's 4 of the Limitless assets. And they're the big 4. So it really does show just the longer you wait for Limitless, the harder it gets to score big points from it.
Question in the chat about not having enough budget for Mercedes and Russell. Is it better to go for Russell with a lower tier constructor? So I think the question here would be B tier driver Mercedes or B tier constructor Russell.
I think that's where I would then go to the Antonelli Mercedes builds, because I do like the idea of doing that differential for Aston, but we just really don't know what could happen in qualifying later today. And if Aston's pace did fall off, where, like, we know Mercedes, worst case scenario, will be in the top 8. Aston Martin, they might not even be in the top 10 in qualifying. We've seen it happen before at sprint races. So I think it's just a lot safer to go to Mercedes route.
Agreed. And particularly on sprint weekends, this is where I would go with 2 tier A constructors and worry about the rest later. If it was a non-sprint weekend, maybe we could play around with it, but sprint weekends are too valuable to potentially lose 40, 50 points on your constructor. Bortoleto or Sainz? I'd say give me Gabby. Good chance to drive every day. Home race, consistent scoring. And then same thing for the question above, Sainz, Alonso, or Bortoleto. Bortoleto over both.
Yeah, Rick. Yeah, exactly that. Antonelli Mercedes build instead of having the B tier constructor. Exactly that. So it'd be like a Norris, Antonelli, McLaren, Mercedes instead of, that's the way it would go.
We're down to our final 5 minutes here. So if you haven't locked in your lineup, make sure you do that. Juicebox, the weather, as Terry reported it to us at the beginning of the hours, it looks like it could be a dry sprint. And as it stands now, a dry or dry-ish Grand Prix tomorrow. The question's going to be wet qualifying, because it looks like the rain's converging on this afternoon.
I would happily have it being a wet session as well. If it did spruce up things for the race, at least we got one session that was chaotic. And the best session for it, F1 fantasy terms, because if they do DNF, we don't have to worry about those big -20s.
Absolutely. We will continue to complain until they reduce the sprint DNFs from -20 to -10. Let's see. If you've got any final questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. Let's see if we can knock some out real fast. Austin wants to know, do I go with Zach's team if I'm using no negative, or Norris Russell with Sainz, Alonso, Gasly?
Yeah, I think it's still fine to no negative with the team I had. I think Colapinto's got just as much of a chance to crash out than Sainz.
Exactly. And no negatives protecting double Alpine. So that's A-okay. Alonso or Sainz? Flip a coin. Alonso has more pace. Sainz coming from the back of the grid today. I'd say maybe Alonso, but that's not a very confident answer out of me at all.
Samuel asks, can I still use Final Fix right after quali? Yes. So you can use Final Fix in a sprint race weekend, I believe even after the sprint.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what will happen is once the scores are final for the sprint race, then the period will open where you can use Final Fix. That period will then close at the start of qualifying. At the end of qualifying, once those scores are final, another window will open, and then that Final Fix will be from then until the Grand Prix. But remember, you still get the points of whatever your current driver had up until that point. So if you're going to use it, try to project ahead and avoid losses wherever you can.
I will say someone actually brought this up before, which I think is quite a smart move that you can use for Final Fix these days if you want to use it more strategically on how your team is placed. If you can afford to get in like a Lando, Piastri, Lando, Russell team with BTA drivers, whatnot, whoever they are, but you need free transfers to do it, and you need to take that -10. That is also where you could keep Verstappen in final fix over to Norris. And then actually, it's a similar thing to what we were talking about before, where you could actually get the budget increases from Verstappen, but the points from Norris. And because it's saving you a -10, your final fix will, like, you can add that to the delta because you're not taking that -10 to get to it. So it actually could end up being a really, really nice final fix to use.
Here's a fun one: Stroll or Behrman?
Oh,
you got to trust Behrman more at this point, right? But would it surprise you if Stroll in the rain put up 15 points this week?
Stroll just puts it on pole in the quali session.
Hey, remember the Magnussen pole? It can happen from the bottom of the grid.
Yeah, I think for Piastri over Russell, my thinking is Piastri, I think, has a clear shot that being in the McLaren, he could still win this race. He could still win the sprint race. He could still win the actual race. I think for Russell, it's more of a, oh, I know he can get in the top 4. I don't think I'm going, oh, he can win this race, which is what pushes me more towards having someone like a Piastri on your team if you can afford to go that route.
Agreed. Lawson or Behrman? Give me Behrman. Lawson in the rain this year hasn't been great.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. The plot thickens. Lawson or Behrman with a -10.
Oh. Keep with whoever you had before.
Yeah, I'd stick with whoever you had before. Just going back to my central point of B-tier drivers, you take a -10 to get into another one. That's sort of asking for a problem, because then if they DNF, it's -30, -20 for the DNF plus the -10 for the transfer, and you're in deep trouble.
1 more minute, everyone. Make sure to lock in. You don't want to miss that deadline.
Juicebox, Race Maven, thanks so much for joining us. Hope you both have a great race. Everybody else, thank you all so very much. This has been another really exciting hour, another sprint race coming up, and we've got one more left in Qatar in a few weeks. Still got my 3X boost, so I want to see who else still has that chip and what are we going to go with for our 3X and 2X options. Zach, any final thoughts for Brazil?
Just don't crash anyone, please. It's the same as Cota, same as Mexico. Don't give me any DNF points. I'm done with them.
Fingers and toes crossed that we have no DNFs. Thank you all so very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.